Good morning. Good morning. If we can find your seats, please. We'll be starting shortly. Thank you so much for attending. My name is Paul Gore. I'm with the Asian Chamber of Commerce. I am the Director of Community Development. This has been a very, very long journey for us, and this is our first event since March 2020 publicly. And so we're happy that you're here. We're happy that you are here to support our initiatives and to learn more about business opportunities both here and abroad. So I'm going to go ahead turn over the whole presentation to give opening remarks from our board chair, Bin Yu. Please give a round of applause for Bin Yu.
Thank you so much, Paul. Welcome everyone. Like Paul said, the last time we do the event, it was a year and a half ago, and just time just flies, and we're really appreciate everyone here to come to the business conference and supporting us. And Asian Chamber of Commerce, the trade, promote trade, and also investment are the top priorities for the Asian Chamber, part of a mission. And we met many of you, the Honorable General Consul and the trade officers, and we talk about how the Chamber and work with you and the country and the regions to promote the trade business. And I think we have a lot of productive meeting. We had 3 trade mission trips scheduled the last 2 years. We have one happen, but the other 2 had to be either go to virtual or canceled. But with this pandemic, we hope it's toward the end, and we are good planning for the next year, and we are very confident we can do more and more trade and investment topics which reach country, the region, and promote the trade opportunities. With that being said, I want to turn to Jensen, Senior Director, the Asian Pacific Region, GHP. Thank you, Jason, to come here to facilitate, and I hope everyone have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Bin. Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining us for International Trade Forum. My name is Jensen Sun, the Senior Director, Asian Australia of Great Houston Partnership. Most of you may know Great Houston Partnership is the Houston Principal Business Organization. We do 3 things. We promote economy, development, investment, and trade. First. The second, we advocate for sound public policy at all levels. Third, we convene a diverse set of regional leaders on key issues impacting the greater Houston community. Before we get started, I would like to thank Bin Yu, Chairman of ACC, Kenneth Lee, Select Chairman, and the ACC team for organizing today's event. Great Houston Partnership and ACC did one trade forum together last year. It seems we'll do once every year. Today's speakers include 2 U.S. very important government agencies, Department of Commerce and Aseem Bank, and consul generals and representatives from 6 Asian regions. As you may know, Houston GDP was $512 billion in 19th. Houston annual trade in 2020 is $197 billion. So look at 500 billion total GDP, but international trade reaches 200 billion. So you can see how important is the international trade. 70.3% of the region's economy is tied to export. And export supports 330,000 jobs in the Houston area. Look at our wallet. Every $6, the $1 is related to for export. The trade with Asian area in this region is $64 billion. which is 1/3 of the total trade international. If you are an export company, you want to do trade, you will, when you want to promote your trade, especially export, the first person you should know is Peter Tataris. Today speak, he is the Senior International Trade Specialist in the USA Department of Commerce in Houston. USA Department of Commerce has office located in all 50 states, every USA territory, and more than 86 countries. It provides USA-based companies and entrepreneurs invaluable tools through programs such as the Golden Key and many others. Let's welcome Peter.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Jansen, for the kind introduction. I would like to thank our host, the Asian Chamber of Commerce, for inviting me to speak here today. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives, one of your primary concerns is to increase revenue and profitability for your stakeholders. Therefore, exporting is one of the strategies firms embrace, no matter if you're selling a physical product or a service. If you have been selling successfully in the U.S., there's no reason why you should fail to do so internationally. I hope you leave here today knowing that you have the U.S. Commercial Service as your partner that will help you achieve your export objectives. The United States Commercial Service is the trade promotion arm of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. We offer companies a full range of expertise in international trade, and you can find us in more than 100 U.S. U.S. offices nationwide, and in more than 76 global offices. It's natural to be overwhelmed when you start thinking of doing business in a foreign country. Therefore, undoubtedly, many things to consider before taking the step. Fortunately, there is an expert nearby who can answer your questions and help you prepare to expand into global markets, and that is the U.S. Commercial Service. Even though COVID has interrupted the flow of goods and services, the world remains open for business. The services and support we provide can be classified into 4 categories: export counseling, market intelligence, business matchmaking, and commercial diplomacy. Our first category, export counseling, is all about strategy and planning. We will guide you in formulating a plan for entry or expansion into targeted markets and countries. Determine if an export license is needed for shipping your products and inform you on how to avoid intellectual property rights issues. In addition, you will be briefed on documentation and product requirements before exporting your goods. For example, with your product Schedule B and HS numbers, you will be in a position to verify the tariff rate for your product, as well as any import fees for a particular country. Our second area of expertise is market intelligence. We are well positioned to analyze the market potential and for competitors upon your request. And you will obtain helpful information on best prospects, laws, and cultural issues related to your industry and product. Lastly, we're able to conduct background checks on potential buyers and distributors. Our third area of expertise is business matchmaking. We will connect you with pre-screened potential partners, promote your product or service to prospective buyers at trade events worldwide, and help you meet with international industry and government decision makers in your target market. Our last area of expertise is commercial diplomacy. Our diplomats address country-specific trade obstacles and facilitate customs clearance of U.S. cargo when they arise. When receiving export advice, you will not find a more dedicated team of trade specialists to help you with your export needs, no matter if you are just starting or an established exporter. Your website is your business ambassador to the world. The first thing foreign buyers do is go to your website or search online. A digital strategy is the starting point for cross-border e-commerce. A digital strategy, one of the e-commerce tools you can request from your local commercial service, is a website globalization review gap analysis to understand your current site performance better and improve the quality and the quantity of website traffic. Fixing your website errors will quickly enhance the search engine result page ranking, making it easier to find. If your company needs business intelligence to enhance its decision-making process further, we have you covered. You may use one or as many services that are available. The Country Commercial Guide is prepared by trade industry experts and provides information on over 125 markets. This is a great tool for companies to use before they go out to a particular country and use their resources and much of their budget. The customized market research. Many times companies come to us and they request specific information on a country. What is a product trend in a particular country? What opportunities exist? What is the pricing scheme? This is where we built a marketing plan for that company where they can use to further expand in that market. Another service we provide is the International Company Profile. All of you attend an event at one time or another. In addition, your website might get hits from foreign buyers, and you want to verify a foreign buyer's background, if it's a legitimate business or not. And this is one of the services we provide to companies. Instead of going overseas to find out if this company is a legitimate company, we do this service on your behalf. And we provide background check, we do financial reports on this company, we interview the company, and we also do site visits, and we produce a 15-20-page report for you to decide if you want to do business or sell to this particular company. One of the questions we frequently get asked is, how can my company connect with international buyers or promote its products and services? One of the services is the single company promotion. In this event, you take your product, your expertise overseas to any country you think there's opportunity, and we will prepare the event for you. We will send out invitations to local partners for them to attend, and the only thing you have to do is show up at that country, and the event can take place either at the embassy's residence, the U.S. Embassy, or a site you select to promote your product. Another event we do is the International Partner Search. Obviously, it's very costing to go overseas to find and identify a partner or a distributor. This is where we come in, and we identify on your behalf 5 potential partners in that particular country you can work with, interview, and decide if you want to go into a contractual agreement or not. Do you already know that markets you want to reach but don't speak the language, or are uncertain about how to promote your company locally? You can now list your company in the featured U.S. exported listing directory of an overseas U.S. commercial service website. The business service provider directories are designed to help U.S. companies identify professional services providers to assist them in assessing, completing, and/or financing an export transaction. Lastly, all of you, or most of you, have heard of the Gold Key service that we provide. This is a service that many companies use because it helps them identify partners and distributors overseas without them leaving the U.S. And the way this works is that we work with the company, we interview the company, and we identify what they're looking for, a partner or a distributor or a sales representative overseas. Then our staff at the U.S. embassies and consulates overseas identify, again, up to 5 potential partners or distributors, and we provide this report to the company in the U.S. Then the company in the U.S. decides if they want to do interviews with these companies or not. So we plan the meetings at a location either at the business site overseas or at a hotel or at the embassy. We provide briefing for this company of the country situation. The only thing the company has to do is show up, do the meetings, and decide if they want to go into contractual agreement or not. So that is the Gold Key service. Trade events. This slide shows trade events organized or supported by the U.S. Commercial Service. Our flagship events you will see at the right, which is the Discover Global Markets and the Trade Winds. These are organized completely by the U.S. Commercial Service. And then we also have other events that help companies certify trade missions. Our overseas events planned, organized, recruited, and led by private and public sector export-oriented groups outside of the U.S. Department of Commerce. Certified trade missions bring representatives of U.S. companies into contact with potential agents, distributors, joint venture partners, licensees, local businesses, and government contracts. So there's a lot of trade events that we participate, and we help U.S. companies be part of them to promote their product or service either locally or overseas. We also conduct business-to-business meetings, business-to-government meetings, where we help, again, U.S. clients connect with overseas buyers. Lastly, commercial diplomacy. Commercial diplomacy is in full swing when advocating on behalf of U.S. companies for a level playing field in foreign government-issued tenders, in instances of trade non-compliance obligations, and customs issued, to name a few. Why export matters. More than 70% of the world's trade purchasing power is outside the U.S., and competitors are increasing this approach. Now, let me show you a slide on where we stand as far as exports compared to GDP. With only 12% of the United States GDP generated by export, it's safe to say we have a lot of room for growth. If you look at the slide, if you can see it, only 12% of the export is generated by, of GDP is generated by export. If you look at Germany, 47% is generated by export. Korea, 44%. China, 20%, which means we have a lot of work to do and, of course, a lot of opportunities ahead of us. Our mission is to grow U.S. exports to increase U.S. jobs. And we do this because we're very well connected worldwide. We have a very good and big network. Like I said earlier, 76 locations. And of course, the bottom line is we're result driven. We're going to help the U.S. companies achieve their results if possible. In 2020, we helped 31,000 U.S. companies export. This is a phenomenal number, and that is the U.S. commercial service with our sister agencies. And we know that exporting can be profitable for business of all sizes. Now, this slide says that the average annual revenue increase reported by commercial service clients last year was $2 million. So if we take the average of all the businesses we helped, we get $2 million. And of course, companies that export grow faster, and this is a fact. Lastly, I'd like to give some statistics with regards to Texas. As you can see, exports have created 1,128,000 jobs in Texas. We've exported from Texas in 2020, almost 276 billion. And from the metropolitan statistical area, Houston, the Woodlands, Sugarland, 104 billion US dollars. And as far as the U.S. commercial service is concerned, we have 5 offices in Texas, 1 in Houston, Fort Worth, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and in El Paso to help you. And 2 more slides. I think I would encourage you to join or to go to these to this side and see the events that do take place. And one of the events is the Trade Winds Middle East and Africa, where companies like yours can join our trade mission to go to Algeria, Morocco, Israel, Saudi Arabia, to do business with local partners. With that said, our contact information is located here, and I thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Peter gave us so many programs. All these programs, because sponsored by USA government, that means you pay no fee or very few fee, you will receive a bigger amount of dollars of your income. Before you export, please talk to Peter, and the government can give you all these resources and back up you. Thank you very much, Peter. For export, we need a product to export. In other words, we need the money to buy and produce the products. There is only one USA government bank can support you. So next speaker will be Eric Miller, Regional Director of Export-Import Bank of the United States. The Ex-Im Bank is official export credit agency of the United States government. I believe Eric was my alumnus from U of H, but he went to the Harvard Business School. Eric, please.
And go Cougs. Good morning, everybody. I was telling my colleague this is the first time in a year and a half I'm not looking at faces on a screen, but faces in person. So this is a big deal for me as well. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the Asian Chamber of Commerce for the invitation to speak. And I'm excited to present the Export-Import Bank of the United States and what we can do for U.S. companies. Is it down? Oop. So we're a small little federal agency. We've got about 500 employees. There's 3 of us in Houston. We have 12 regional offices. Most of us are in D.C., headquartered in D.C. but there's probably 40, 50 of us scattered around the U.S. promoting the bank. We've been around since 1934. We're an executive branch government agency. We're also independent, so we're not inside a cabinet, for instance. We have political appointees as it relates to our board of directors and chairman, and we're still waiting on the Biden-Harris nomination for our chairman. But we have an acting chair right now, so there's no gap in service, for instance. We exist to help fill gaps of the private sector as it relates to trade finance. Peter pointed out some very compelling statistics. We take our export value over our GDP, and we've got 12% of that going overseas. Last I looked, out of roughly 195 countries, we're ranked between 150 and 160 as it relates to exports over GDP. And we've got about $1 trillion deficit this year of more stuff coming in versus going out. So we're pretty good about bringing stuff in. We're not very good about sending stuff out. And that's why government gets involved. That's why Peter gets involved. That's why we get involved. We want to help U.S. companies put U.S.-made goods and services into the hands of foreign buyers, because we have a selfish reason also. We want to help the trade deficit. We want to create jobs. We want to stimulate economic growth. And the more foreign money coming into the country, the better also for the country. So we have our own reasons to do this. We look at it through a different lens. We don't look at it through profitability. We look at it through job creation. We also help level the playing field for U.S. companies. So, for instance, we're what's called an export credit agency, ECA. So out of roughly 200 countries, there's 120 of us that represent their nation. And we all have the same goal. We want to put domestic-made goods and services into the hands of foreign buyers. We want to help export, export, export. Now, I know our name is Export-Import Bank. It's a little bit of a misnomer. We don't support imports. We only support exports. Sorry. Now, it's called that because when there's a trade, there's an export on this side and an import on this side. I've been telling them, change the name, change the name, change the name. They don't listen to me, though. So with that said, we also are very small business focused. Whoops. We're very small business focused. So 90% of all of our deals are small business. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. I get calls and emails all the time. Hey, I didn't know you could help me. I thought it was just big companies. It's not big companies. It's the majority of it is small companies. So don't be misled. I'm the Houston contact for the bank. I cover all of Texas and New Mexico. So if your company is in one of those two states, I'll be your contact for the bank. There's no deal too small. I've worked with companies in Houston that had a couple $1,000s of a sale going to a foreign country, and we were able to help them. So how can we help you? I'll be very specific. There's two ways for the U.S. company. We can insure your credit sales, and we can help you get access to export working capital. And I'll go into each of those a little bit more. So credit insurance. You're a service company. You're a product company. You're selling a good or service to a foreign buyer, and you're putting on your invoice net 30, net 60, net 90, whatever it may be. You're giving them credit. You can't always say, give me money now and I'll ship it later, because a buyer can go to another country, right? So to be competitive, you're going to have to give terms and not just cash in advance all the time, unless you have something super unique that nobody else can make in the world, which I have yet to find. I'm sure it's out there, though. But you give them terms, and the biggest reason U.S. companies don't export more is fear. That's the number one reason. So you don't want to export and give terms, because what happens? You ship it, you wave your product goodbye, and then you're knocking on the door 30 days later, where's my money? Crickets, right? That's a reasonable fear, is you don't want to ship something or provide a service, bill it on terms, and then you're worried about getting paid. Is anybody exporting currently in the room? No. Okay, we got exporters. So you have a reasonable reason for not exporting if your buyer is asking for terms. We, the federal government, want to get involved and protect that payment. We want to insure that payment. So in other words, we put an insurance policy on your foreign buyer payments that's given on terms, We protect it. You don't get paid, put a claim into us and we'll pay you. So we take away the repayment risk of the foreign buyer and put it on our shoulders. And it's a very reasonable cost to do that. We have really 4 different policies. It comes down to, do you have one buyer? Do you have multiple buyers? Are you a small business? Are you a big business? We can go down that maze of questions and figure out where you fit best. But we cover commercial and political risk. The commercial risk is going to be things like bankruptcy, insolvency, more than 90 days past due. So let's say you ship a product, you bill it on net 30 and you don't get paid. We want you to try to collect for 90 days after the due date, and if you can't, then you could put a claim into us for payment. So that's the commercial risk. The political risk is going to be things like war, currency and convertibility, and loss of import license, political in nature. So it's simple. This is kind of a flow chart of how it works. First, you need a buyer, right? You need a buyer. You negotiate the payment terms, whether it's cash in advance, credit, letter of credit, whatever it may be. If it's credit and you agree on that, and you have a contract, come to us to get a policy and we'll protect you. Now, we still have to underwrite the buyer. So, startups are tough. We generally like to see 3 years in business on both sides, the exporter and the foreign buyer. So we look at both sides, and once you have a policy in place, you ship it, you report it in our system, you pay the insurance premium, and then you're protected. You don't get paid, then you put a claim into us and we pay you once approved. Here's an example of one of the 4 policies that we offer. It's called Express Insurance. So this is our most popular for small business. We protect your payment at 95%. There is no deductible. Again, it covers commercial and political risk. The cost depends on the terms that you give to your buyer. So if it's anywhere from 1 to 60-day credit, the cost is going to be 0.65% of your invoice. So let's say $50,000 of product going to Mexico on net 60, you're going to pay us $325, which is the 0.65. $325 to insure 95% of the 50,000. So, a few $100 to sleep at night knowing that if you don't get paid, we're a backup resource for that. Again, this just goes over the risk. What's not covered is contract dispute. So let's say you're making a widget, you ship it, the buyer gets it, and they say, hey, this is not what I ordered. This is the wrong spec. It does this, but you said it was going to do this. That's a contractual dispute which is not covered. So that has to be settled before a claim can be filed. This is really about being worried about not knowing a foreign buyer. You ship it to another country, and you're concerned about getting paid, right? Because if they disappear, how are you going to collect? Good luck, right? So that's the credit insurance. The second product that we can help you with is called a working capital loan guarantee. I'll be clear, we're not a bank that gives money. We're a bank that gives insurance and guarantees. So the problem we have here in the US is, let's say you get a $5 million purchase order from Taiwan, and you're a manufacturer. You walk that over to your bank and say, hey, got a $5 million PO from a big company in Taiwan, and I need $2 million as a line of credit to make this stuff. The bank 9.9 times out of 10 is going to say forget it. Because it's going overseas, it's export, it's Taiwan, but if you have a domestic purchase order, come back and see me. They don't like the risk. And we get involved, again, to fill in some of these holes, these gaps of the US banking system. So what we tell your bank is, if the company meets the credit standards to borrow, if they have the financial statements to borrow $2 million and you're only saying no because of the word export, give them the money that they need and we'll co-sign. The federal government, via Exim Bank, will co-sign. So we take away the repayment risk of the bank and put it on our shoulders. So we essentially open up access to export working capital. And again, that's with your bank. We're not the lender. This is general eligibility, 3 years in business, need a DUNS number. We have what's called a country limitation schedule on our website. So if you go to exim.gov, exim.gov, and you type in the search field country limitation schedule, you'll get a web page that shows all the countries we're open in and those that we're closed in. We can't do sanctioned countries. Obviously, some of the countries that are more in economic turmoil are a little harder, a little challenging to get approval. But in 195 countries, we're open in 180. So that gives you a good preview of what we can do. Again, U.S. made products and services, so our U.S. content policy is greater than 50% U.S. content. So we recognize if you're making something here in the U.S., it's very hard to do it all domestic. Some of the materials are coming in overseas, so that's why we say greater than 50% U.S. content. So we do allow some imported costs. It needs to ship from here, made here, shipped here, greater than 50% U.S. content. We can't do military or defense-relaed products or buyers. There are exceptions, but those are very challenging. Some of the exceptions are dual use, drug interdiction, and humanitarian reasons. So if you're selling to a military buyer, one of those exceptions we could look at. This is, again, our country limitation schedule. We're open in 180 out of roughly 200 countries in the world. Sometimes there's we may be open in a country, but there's limitations, and I can be happy to tell you what that means in a non-government language if you have any questions. That's my contact details. Again, I'm here in Houston. That's my mobile number, email. I'm working virtually, but no service level has changed. We're just in a different office environment. So feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Thank you once again for being here.
Eric, thank you very much. And when you have an export business, most difficult is not that you sign the contract, it's not that you ship the goods, it's the time you get the money. Because so now Eric provides this kind of program. You don't need to worry about it, as long as you do follow the procedure. So Eric, and I will guarantee now, because when I listened to the India presentation, I listened to the Japan presentation. When I in the Department of Commerce meeting, I always complain, USA don't have enough incentives for support our export. But now these two agents, and Peter and Eric are the two persons you have to meet. I will guarantee you, if you are a salesperson, if you know these two persons, within a year, you will become sales manager. If you are a sales manager, you begin with 1 year, you will become the deputy general manager or general manager, okay? Because they are really support you to export. Thank you very much. These are the two USA government. Next, we'll have our Asian country presentation. First speak is Honorable Aseem Mahajan, India Consul General. Indian trade grew 46% in 2019. Before pandemic, become the top 7 of Houston trade destination. India Consul General Aseem Mahajan joined the India Foreign Service in 1998. He had over 20 years work experience. Before as a Consul General in Houston, in January 20, he was ambassador and DPR of India to the World Trade Organization in Geneva. Over 1 year in Houston, I know him already very well because he has organized so many trade promotion events. Let's welcome Ambassador Mahajan.
Good morning to all of you, representatives of U.S. Commercial Services, Exim Bank, my distinguished colleagues from the Consular Corps, representatives of companies, the Asia Chamber of Commerce. Like the other speakers have highlighted, I think it's really a pleasure to be in this format. And while we have done, as Mr. Jensen mentioned, a lot of events in the last year, but this perhaps happens to be a different one for me. We are usually used to sitting in front of our screens and clicking the mouse, and you know, it gives us a fresh feel of at least connecting with people physically, and I hope we are able to get back to this format as the year goes down. We are all very hopeful that this pandemic is going to end, and we will have more such physical interaction. So what I'm going to do is I will basically so the given time I will try to highlight the immense opportunities which are there for trade and investment between India and United States, and also focus on the region, the greater Houston region. And we, as the consulate is based here, we cover 8 states in southern United States, and that is a big territory. And when people ask me, I always tell them that each of these states has so much of potential. Their economies are so big. Texas alone has such a large economy and such a diverse economy, so the potential is immense. As two vibrant democracies having open and multicultural societies, shared values and commonalities in culture, India and United States are natural partners. Our comprehensive strategic partnership is broad-based, with growing engagement in areas like energy, defense, security, and of course trade and investment and people-to-people contacts. Jensen did mention about the growth of trade, 46% in 2019, but overall between India and United States it is growing very rapidly, and I'm happy to mention that in the last few years both trade in goods and services has increased. There was a slight dip during the pandemic, but over this first quarter of this year, again, we are seeing a very healthy growth. The number of US companies in India is growing rapidly. We have more than 2,000 US companies in India, and that illustrates the immense potential and opportunities which exist for all of you to look at India and go there. So I will briefly touch upon some themes in the given time and try to highlight some of these opportunities. First, about India. India is a large and diverse country of 1.3 billion people. We are amongst the fastest growing economies in the world, and the IMF projects that we will grow by 11.5% this year. We are also emerging as the top investment destination globally. I will later show a slide also. The FDI inflow has continued to grow, and it was 67.5 billion in the 9 months from April to December. Demographics of India. I think this is a slide which I would want to spend some time and actually illustrate how India is the youngest country in the world. We have been undertaking major reforms for foreign direct investment, and in the last few years, India has really taken leaps in that direction, including a very comprehensive reforms on our general and services tax, which is helping companies to invest in India. We are also focusing on many sectors like agriculture, auto components, defense, construction, development, broadcasting, pharmaceuticals, e-commerce, and other areas. The Indian technology and business process outsourcing, I think industry is globally known. We are 56% of the global outsourcing market and amongst the largest startup ecosystem in the world. Recently, just on 31st August, we did an event in partnership with multiple stakeholders in United States and all over southern United States to highlight the immense potential in the area of startups. I think that is one big area which is emerging here, especially for places like Dallas, Austin, and Houston. The demographics of India. When I mentioned that India is a country of 1.3 billion people, and while some statistics can get lost in percentages, but we have almost 400 million people below the age of 20. And India's average age will only be 29 by 2025, so it is amongst the youngest countries in the world, rather the youngest country. We have a very large youth population, and a big percentage of our population is trained technical pool of manpower, which actually contributes to adding in the global workforce, as well as an opportunity to go to India in areas like technology and other areas. In terms of ease of doing business, in the last few years, India has really jumped on the World Bank rankings. As you know, the World Bank uses a few indicators to rank countries on ease of doing business, which include starting a business, dealing with permits and many other parameters. And we have in this area made some big reforms. I have already mentioned about the taxes, registering, and I should also mention that India, given the size and diversity of India, India also has states like United States. So when you look at India, you have to look at a country where different regions offer different opportunities. For example, if you want to invest in automobiles, there are states in the south which have one of the largest growing automobile and automobile component industries in the world. We have Bangalore and Karnataka, which is the IT capital almost of the world, with all the major IT centers there. Then we have major food parks coming in Andhra Pradesh. Similarly, in northern India, agricultural technology. So if you look at India, please do look at India as a country which is big and diverse. And then depending on your area of interest, where you find a match, that is how I think should be the beginning point of going. Renewable energy, Houston is the energy capital of the world. Energy is one of our key areas of partnership here. I will focus on some of the areas which find direct connect here. We have been working with Greater Houston Partnership on many events in different configurations and geometries over the last year, and we have in fact highlighted some opportunities in areas like energy, healthcare and medical research and other areas. In renewable energy, as you see, this is one of the reports from the British Business Energy Study, which shows India as the third ecosystem for energy, and renewable energy is emerging as a big area. Solar, wind, and even in gas, clean energy and other areas, including biofuels, electric vehicles, and a lot of companies from Houston are partnering with Indian companies in that area for technology transfer, for joint ventures. So if you have a connect with energy, do connect with us. We will, of course, then provide you focused inputs in that area. In terms of global R&D, I already mentioned in the beginning, all the major companies of the world have research and development facilities in India. In fact, these are only a few which I have just shown in the recent past, and they have some of their larger facilities coming up in India. And from many companies from this region as well, they have R&D and research facilities. These centers are growing. We have a very big base coming up in states like Andhra Pradesh, near Delhi, in Gurgaon, in Karnataka, and all over India, where these IT hubs are there, hubs for innovation and technology are there. So if you are a Houston-based company and you want to find a connect in this ecosystem, please do reach out to us. Many companies are finding partners in India to collaborate for technology, innovation, and for their own research and development. This slide, again, I just wanted to show you briefly. This is of the latest foreign portfolio investment flow in the last 12 months. As you can find from this slide, this is how India has performed in the recent months. While this pandemic has impacted all the countries, but in the recent months, our economy has registered a very rapid growth. So I hope this recovery, as globally as we come out of this pandemic all over the world, it will lead to a V kind of a recovery, and we will be able to come back to the growth levels which were pre-pandemic. Coming down to a little focus on the India-US investments, these are the top sectors which are attracting investments from United States, and as you can find, these are common connects which our two countries share for mutual benefit. We have synergies in areas like software and IT services. I was today in the morning seeing a report that it will be a 1 trillion, the software as a service industry, which is growing, and in fact, the largest number of unicorns in the last couple of months have come up in that area. As companies deal with this pandemic, I think that is one area where services are really growing, and from this region as well, many IT and innovation companies are working with Indian IT companies to collaborate in innovation and also in startups in this area. Business services, pharmaceuticals, India has the largest number of FDA compliant facilities. Generic drugs, You're all aware the number of, the volume of generic drugs which is exported here, and at the same time, I think there is a lot of joint research growing in that area. While in this pandemic also many vaccine candidates which are being jointly developed. Baylor College here is developing a vaccine in partnership with a company in Hyderabad, and similarly many other US companies are partnering with India. India is the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world, and many US companies are undertaking clinical trials. Metals, industrial equipment and communications are some other areas. So Indian companies in United States, and this is where the investments are continuing to come. While US companies are going to India, a lot of Indian companies are coming here as well. We have a very large number of companies who are coming to Texas. Texas ranks, in fact, the #1 state out of all the states in United States to attract investments. We have 40 companies. This is the latest CII report of 2020, creating 17,500 jobs in Texas with $9.5 billion worth of investment in diverse sectors like life sciences, manufacturing, and automobiles. So India-Houston partnership. This is the latest slide which we have just got for March this year, and as you see, again, India is starting to come back. We are number 5 in March 2021. There is immense potential in this area. Of course, many products which are being manufactured here and being exported to India, and similarly coming from India to this part of United States. I don't have the time to get into in-depth in that, but what I do recommend strongly is that if anyone of you has individual interest, do reach out to us. Finally, this slide, which I think I'll spend a minute or two on this, because this is something I really wanted to highlight. Now, we have been organizing several events in the last year. We have done with multiple chambers. We have done with the Greater Houston Partnership. We have a very vibrant chamber in Houston, the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce of Greater Houston. Jagdeep, who is a representative of the chamber, is present here. They are our strong partners. We have a very strong chamber in Dallas. And both these chambers bring different diversity to our connect. Dallas, of course, is focusing more on IT, innovation, startups, and that kind of connect. And here in Houston, we have traditional areas like energy, which in the last couple of years has grown rapidly. Then we have areas like healthcare. Medical devices is a big area, which I think offers immense potential for US companies to go and manufacture in India. India is one of the largest medical devices market in the world. It is growing very rapidly, and we have a huge demand. Hospital and hospital administration systems. A lot of hospitals are already partnering and collaborating in this area. Information technology, I have already mentioned, it is a big connect, and we get a lot of queries from local Houston companies. We will be happy to connect you with different agencies in India, with different associations in India, and even individually with companies who can offer these solutions. New and renewable energy, hydrogen, these are some areas where a lot of partnerships are developing. I've already spoken about startups and innovation, and chemicals, of course, is another big area where companies based in Houston, who are in the Greater Houston region, they are going in India to distribute their products, as well as to go and manufacture there, because India is one of the fastest growing markets for petrochemicals, industrial plastics, and there is immense potential in this area. And partnering in global supply chains, I think, is one of the areas which we are working with the United States together. We have big US companies present in India who are partnering with us, and there is again immense potential in this area. And finally, of course, manufacturing, processing, and these areas. So this was just a kind of a snapshot and an overview of what are the areas and what are the kind of potential in trade and investment between both countries. We have our contact here. The Consulate offers various services. We connect you to people. We organize events together. We will be happy to partner with chambers. We will be happy to work with US commercial services, with any of you present here to highlight these immense opportunities for mutual benefit. If you have any specific queries, please do address them to us. If you need any tailored solutions, any individual kind of connects, please do reach out to us. And thank you again for giving me this opportunity. I wish you good health. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm sure we will have many of these physical connects together, because this is really, I think, what brings more energy into our connects and also helps us to build these relationships. So thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ambassador Mahajan. And also, I would like to thank Jadip, the ambassador already mentioned. He linked the Great Eastern Partnership closely with the Consul General Office and linked with the India companies together. Thank you very much. And there are 125,000 Indian America in Houston area. That's the largest Asian population. So made a lot of voice here. Okay, thank you. Next to speak is Honorable Angela Omer Siregar of Indonesia, Consul General. Consul General Angela Omer Siregar is a Korean diplomat since 1998. It has been already 23 years, but looks he is very young, but he has been working on the 23 years. He had a very close relation with the president of Indonesia. He served as interpreter and assistant special staff for international relations for the president of Indonesia. Let's welcome Consul General Siregar, please.
Thank you, Jensen. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning. I love it when people notice he still looks young. So when I meet with my colleague, brother, Ambassador Aseem, we're probably the same age, but I think I have a different. I wear Purge shampoo. That's an American brand, just so you know, from Procter & Gamble. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. Like Ambassador Aseem mentioned, we don't get many face-to-face meetings, but now that we are doing it, it doesn't mean that we're ignoring the COVID situation. It just means that our meetings are that more important. So I congratulate ACC for having this event, and to all of you to have the courage to meet, because too many Zoom meetings might miss out on the real message that we want to convey. Before I have a presentation here, and I've given a 10-minute, 15-minute time slot, but as I look at the participants here, I can foresee that most of you are about 35 years old or young industrialists and captains of industries, Jensen. Listening to the U.S. representatives, I'm excited because it just means that, as they say, Texas is growing very fast in the U.S. I'm proud to be here for the past 6 months, but I'm noticing that many big companies are moving to Texas. So, and as it's the Asian century, it just means that this ACC, Jensen, is a real good time for us to collaborate. And I'm hoping I can work with Eric and with Peter how we can get more Americans to see the other side of the world. I noticed Ambassador Aseem mentioned many American companies in India, because India makes great movies, so I'm sure many go there for that and they're more familiar. But for Indonesia, we have Bali, but most of you young folks might be interested in the other potential for the next coming 25 years. Just for that, I also want to congratulate ACC. 30 years is not too old, not too young, but you're doing great. And I want to congratulate that the Indonesian American Chamber of Commerce, South East Central USA, is working closely with you. And should you want to see an Indonesia stand, there's one outside prepared just in case you want to follow up and perhaps at least visit some parts of Indonesia. One thing I want to go straight to is for Indonesia. Go ahead. Over. It's here. Right. It's actually pretty close. It's not as far as from Texas to the borders, but it's quite a ride. But most people that go to this part of the world does find an affinity for it. But despite such distance, America has been an important partner for Indonesia since 1945, and a lot of development has gone with Indonesia. And as mentioned by previous speakers, there's a lot of potential for Indonesia. But more than that, there are many, many other elements that we can play a role as the fourth largest populated country in the world. It's actually, the size is 3,200 miles, but if you compare that to the US, we're pretty similar. And like I said earlier, there's so much potential, and there are many, many young Americans already there. And as a member of the G20, we work closely with the government. Just a few weeks ago, I think my foreign minister met with the Secretary of State to explore ways that we can not only overcome this COVID situation, but also how we can accelerate our economies. One thing probably you need to know is that Indonesia is like the US. We're very, very diverse. We have Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, diversity in unity in diversity. The US have E pluribus pluribus unum, many, one. But the fact is, compared to our population, we're not far apart, and we're projected to be, both the US and Indonesia are projected to be the top 5 biggest economies in the world. And the others include India, of course, Ambassador. One thing I also wish to convey is that we share a lot in common here. I see my colleague from Korea, I see my colleague from, of course, India. We're democracies, and for us, the right to those industries, those entrepreneurs to thrive is important. There are many new actors now in the world, and yet we want those small, micro, medium enterprises to thrive. And I'm looking forward to listening to Eric how we can bring small companies from the US to Indonesia. One other thing I'd also like to convey is that in the coming years, as Ambassador Aseem mentioned, Indonesia has also a very young demography. So I'm not mentioning Ambassador Aseem all the time just because I have an Indian background, 3 generations before, but the reality is our part of the world, we have many, many young friends. And I see my colleague from Vietnam, our young generation is going to be the next captains of industry, and seeing that Texas is thriving so fast in the entire US, I'm hoping that we can be closer partners instead of just competitors. Here's a quick snapshot of who we are. And like I said, I'm here to make sure that you're comfortable with Indonesia. Should you need to get more information, please come over. If you're not convinced, I can throw a lunch with it. It'll be a free lunch. In my case, there is a free lunch. Although if you do invest there, please send a good name about me so I can be promoted just like Ambassador Aseem. But the other point I'd like to highlight is that we have a new system. We have a special energy outlook where with all the potential and the need for energy security in the coming years, we have a one-stop service. Right now, everything is centralized in Jakarta, so rest assured, if you have potential, be that in any part of the energy sector, please talk with me so that we can make sure you meet with the right persons. Just briefly going through the slide, in Southeast Asia, in ASEAN, Indonesia is the biggest country in Southeast Asian region. We work closely with our brothers from Vietnam, but more than that, we are one of the fastest growing regions in the world. And the EU is coming to us to learn more how we manage it, but ASEAN works closely with important partner countries like our friends from Korea, from India, and also from Japan. One thing that I do highlight is that I must say in Westheimer Avenue, there's a lot of great seafood, but I think we can bring more Indonesian seafood here so that American companies can make greater food. I know that I'm competing with my Filipino friends because they make great seafood cuisines, but eventually the more seafood you have in Texas, I think there's great potential. Other things also, traditionally we work in the palm oil industry, but right now that's also been utilized for other food supplies. And as I mentioned earlier, the US were one of the first partners in the mining industry. We're continuing to find new areas for mining, but the reality is even companies like Tesla and others are looking forward to finding partners not only in India, but in Indonesia and Thailand to facilitate their nickel needs, their nickel and their battery needs. So this is where everybody's moving. So even though, like Eric said, some of you may be starting up your companies, Indonesia is ready to facilitate you so that for the next 3 years you'll have a great record and you might even start competing with the big boys. One thing I'd like to highlight is that as much as it mentions here, like in a developing country, we focus on agriculture, but my consulate covers 10 states. So Ambassador, 8 state is big, 10 state is also big, but still Texas is really, really big. So I've only managed to been to several small towns like Dallas and Austin. Nothing is as big as Houston, but I'd love to go down all the way to McLennan and other sites. But Texas is big, so I think the Asian Chamber, Jensen and Mr. Lee, there's so much potential. And of course, as I mentioned about earlier, the potential for energy cooperation. Here I can say that our trade has improved a lot in the past year, in fact, actually. So COVID has not dimmed our spirits in trading. It's actually increased by at least 1.7 billion since COVID took place. And just a quick one before I conclude my slides. Indonesia is also a big trading partner with the US. We have the GSP, and it's being the GSP is being extended, so there's more potential. But I'm really excited to have more Americans export to Indonesia for the fact that we're happy with all the imports we get from Europe, from Australia, and from other countries, but would love to see more American products, and vice versa. If you should be needing to make some production in Indonesia, I can facilitate so that you can re-export or even send your products elsewhere. And of course, here I mentioned the kinds of products: mineral fuel, oils, oil seeds, and food industry. I'll let you look into that in the slides, which you want to find out. One thing, as I mentioned earlier, in the next 25 years, I mentioned this in my reception, that as busy as we are today trying to overcome the COVID situation, we're trying to rebounce our economies. The G20 is meeting on a regular basis, and Ambassador Aseem probably knows WTO is still striving to get more trade between countries at a more free manner. The reality is it's up to these young entrepreneurs, all of you, especially in Texas, to see that it's not just about what's happening today, but what we'll be needing in the future. And I foresee that it'll be a lot to do about energy, it'll be a lot to do about space, and it'll be a lot to do about medicine. Ambassador Aseem mentioned that India and Baylor is working together. Indonesia and Baylor is also working together. So again, Texas plays a thriving role to contribute to the world health system. And God willing, both India and Indonesia will both be making the new vaccines, which we can provide to the developing countries and even to the OIC countries. I just mentioned that. And so, as I mentioned earlier, there is this new movement in Indonesia for the energy outlook. And as I mentioned, it's big business. We have a lot of sites, and instead of us competing with other countries or other actors, if the US and Indonesia can work even closer, we can both secure by 2050, all of us here will be strong partners instead of competing with one another. And here I mentioned the part of the global energy supply. We want to push for more value-added industries. The online single submission is very, very unique, very special, and very new. So please come to my office, or if you want to have a free Indonesian meal, please book that first, and then we can give you the names of that. I see the hand going up. I'll go very fast now. Was that a hand for a meal, or was that a hand for give me an extra 5 minutes? Oh, excellent, excellent. You'll have 2 meals for that matter. The Indo-Pacific Century. My brother from India here has the same view as I, as also a colleague from Japan. It's the Indo-Pacific Century, my friends. It's going to be very, very dicey if we don't work together, and it's important that we take advantage of this energy outlook and potential cooperation. And so, as I conclude, just last week I made this announcement: how can Indonesia and the U.S., especially through Houston, move together in the next 25 years for the Indo-Pacific Century? Indonesia is also now developing nano satellites. They're very, very cheap, but as our country located in the equator, maybe some American companies here can explore. You can dominate that part of the market. And of course, as I mentioned about the vaccine collaboration, we have so much potential from Houston. There you have it, and thank you very much for your time. I want to again express my appreciation to the ACC for having me, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Consul General Siregar. And I discussed talk about with Kenneth Lee and Bing Yi. When we are in Bali, we'll call you, and we are stay in the beach and eat the seafood. But it looks like you will bring the seafood into Houston restaurant. We can eat here. Thank you very much. Next to speak will be Honorable Hideo Fukushima, Consul General of Japan. Japan is the number 8 Houston trade partner. However, It always keeps #1 foreign direct investment in the USA. With the Consul General Fukushima-san and Jetro support, City of Houston Mayor Turno and Bob Harvey, President of CEO of the Great Houston Partnership, organized a virtual mission to Japan at the end of the last year. It's very successful. Let's welcome Fukushima-san.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me in this trade forum. And I really would like to congratulate Asian Chamber of Commerce for coming back to this trade forum after some time. That last time it was May, June that you had a first part of this trade forum, but due to this very tricky situation, pandemic. But now we are coming back to this, and I'm so glad. I know this is really a tricky situation, and wearing masks and off and on, and this is really kind of a difficult time. And but very cautiously, with the precaution, we are coming back to this modality. Japan is also has been suffering with this pandemic likewise, and our vaccination rate is just coming back to the level of U.S. recently. And several weeks ago, we hosted the Olympic, but really, it really showed us that there's a way to go. I mean, even under this pandemic, you still can go for such events successfully. So. And at the same time, I would like to congratulate the U.S. team winning lots of medals, more than any country in the world. You are the number one. Well, so I also would like to express my gratitude to all the experts from federal agencies and the local institutions and our international friends, giving me so much insights about trade and investment relationship that this region has. Well, as more people around the world becoming vaccinated against the COVID, we are really gradually seeing economic activities recover. And that is especially true for international business, which slowed to a crawl last year. Fortunately for Japan and Houston, we do not have to start over from square one. The economic and the interpersonal ties between Japanese companies and their partners in Greater Houston are deep. There is a long history of cooperation here, which is sure to bounce back. That history goes back about 120 years to when Japanese business people first introduced rice agriculture to the area south of Houston. Over the next few decades, the focus of Japanese business shifted from farming to energy, as Texas quickly became the energy capital of the world. Soon after, in the late 50s, serious Japanese investment in the sector took off when Mitsui Trading Company opened its Houston office to focus on developing energy products here. Even now, over 60 years later, energy is still a central focus of Japanese business in Houston. Several major Japanese energy companies like Chiyoda, Osaka Gas, Tokyo Gas, all have the US headquarters in the area. Together, they and companies like them work in all aspects of the industry, including engineering, discovery, exports, and renewables. But energy is not the only sector where Japanese companies are involved. As a matter of fact, some of the biggest job creators among Japanese companies in the region are those in the industrial sector. One of the biggest is, of course, near Houston, Daikin, which has a huge air conditioner factory in Waller that can employ up to 7,000 people. Other industrial giants like Mitsubishi Heavy, Toshiba International, and Kuraray also employ thousands more people in Greater Houston. Even as the energy and the industrial sectors in Houston continues to thrive, Japanese companies are finding more and more opportunities here in high-tech fields like AI, digital transformation, and renewable energy. On that score, I'd like to highlight the field of medical technology here, since the pandemic has made its importance clear. Because of Japan's aging population, we are one of the oldest countries in the world. Our medical researchers and the biotech companies have deep expertise that can be put to good use with partners in Houston's medical center. For example, the Japanese company Eva Heart has an office there working to provide its heart assist medical device for use across North America. There are two big reasons Houston is such a desirable destination for Japanese companies. First, there is the region's great climate for business. Of course, this includes state and local policies on issues like regulations and taxes, but it also extends to other areas like infrastructure, where pipeline and the port of Houston make importing and exporting so easy. Furthermore, the city's geography provides convenient opportunities for exchange with both US coasts and nearby countries in South America. Second, there's the area's incredible people. The people of Houston bring diverse backgrounds and high levels of skill and education that makes them world-class employees. On a personal level, they are also kind and welcoming to Japanese residents, whether they are neighbors or business partners. These personal relationships are the real foundation of our strong economic ties. In that respect, we are very thankful for the leadership of Mayor Turner and GHP, who has brought our business communities closer together than ever before. I especially want to thank CD and the GHP for the virtual trade mission that Jensen just mentioned previously last year, which was so successful, which brought over 300 Japanese investors together to hear about the city's amazing business opportunity. I'd like to conclude here, and I have no doubt that today's event will also be the seed for many fruitful Japan-Houston business partnership in the future. Thank you for your attention.
Fukushima-san is with us for 3 years. Can I say you will leave? Okay. But he will leave us next month. We could not make a farewell reception for him in person because of the pandemic. So let me take this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you to all this for Houston and Japan. Thank you very much, and best of wishes. Next to speak will be Honorable Manong Song-an, Consul General of the Republic of Korea. South Korea always kept the top 4 trade partner with Texas, as well as Houston. Before pandemic in 2019, its trade increased 28%. Consul General N, please. Let's welcome him.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chen, for your kind introduction. And I would also like to thank Asian Chamber of Commerce for providing this opportunity so that I can explain how Korean economy has developed and its relationship in economic and trade terms between Korea and United States. Well, actually, I think the awareness of Korean economy is not fairly high as I find it in Texas. So I prepared some material about the Korean economy. And I have a lot of things to cover, so let me proceed with my presentation directly. Down, okay. Okay, first I will briefly explain Korean economy, how it developed, and second, I will go to where Korea stands now, and then I will conclude with some words about Korea-US economic and trade relations. So how it developed, the Korean economy? Well, I think I have to begin with the Korean War when it comes to how Korea developed its economy. And Korean people built its economy on the ashes of the Korean War, which lasted from June 1950 to July 1953. And as a result, the industrial base of Korea was almost completely destroyed. And Korean people were forced to build its economy from scratch. Well, Korea's economic development began in early 1960s when Korean government adopted export-oriented growth strategy. In the 1960s, Korean companies began to export light industrial products like textile, footwear, and wig. And in 70s and 80s, Korean people made investment and developed heavy and chemical industries such as steel, automobiles, and shipbuilding, chemicals, machinery, electronics, and semiconductor. And in 1990s, Korean companies expanded its R&D efforts, focusing on ICT sector. And this was, I guess, a turning point in Korean economy. Well, I think many Asian countries will remember Asian financial crisis, which hit Southeast Asia in late 1990s, beginning with Thailand and then Indonesia and Korea. So why I'm talking about is that Korean economic success was not without ups and downs. In November 1997, Korea was forced to go to IMF for bailout. But Korean people, they pushed ahead with restructuring, and as a result, in 3 to 4 years, Korea regained its previous growth rate, emerging even stronger. And the crisis turned out to be a blessing in disguise for Korean people. And in early 2000s, Korean people made the bigger investment in ICT field. Now, let me turn to where Korea stands now. Last year was a milestone year in the history of Korea's economic development. and Korean government, Korean Republic of Korea ranked among world's top 10 in terms of total GDP in nominal terms. So Korea is in 10th place with $1.59 trillion in 2020. And I'm sure and I hope Korean economy has only way to go up, not down. And you know, Canada and Italy, their GDP is not much bigger than Korea's, so I hope and I'm sure Korean economy will surpass Italy and Canada in several years. This kind of economic development was fueled by innovation based on huge investment in R&D. There are different statistics, but let me turn to Bloomberg. And according to Bloomberg, in Bloomberg Index earlier this year, Republic of Korea was ranked the most innovative country in the world. And what is interesting is that according to Bloomberg, Korea was #1 innovative country in the world for 8 times during the last 10 years. And let me turn to industrial sectors, beginning with electronics. In semiconductor memory sector, Korean companies represent 73% of market share, global market share. And in TV, Samsung and LG is dominant in this TV and electronics sector. And Samsung Electronics provides about 20% of global smartphone supply. And actually, I'd like to put some emphasis on Korea's automobile sector. You know, Korea is the 5th largest automaker in the world last year after China, United States, Japan, and Germany. And focusing on, drawing your attention to US market, US car market. Most recently, a couple of months ago, Korean car companies' market share in the United States was 11%. And the growth trend is remarkable. At the end of last year, it was only 7%. And during the last 6 or 7 months, that's grown from 7 to 11%. Now, all the attention is focused on electric vehicle these days because of energy transition. And, you know, Korean company Hyundai is #4 in the world when it comes to electric vehicle market after Tesla, Volkswagen, and Renault Nissan. And I believe this year, and especially from next year, you will be able to see a lot of Korean electric cars on the street. And the most important component of electric vehicle is electric vehicle batteries. And in 2020, Korean companies produced 34.7% of electric vehicle batteries. 34.7. But what's interesting is that during the previous year, the combined market share of Korean companies was only 16%. It's growing tremendously. And I'd like to point out that there is a contract between SK Innovation, which has its plant for electric vehicle battery in Georgia. SK has a contract with Ford. So if you have any plan to buy F-150 in the near future, electric version. The car will be run on Korean company-made batteries. Well, let me turn to hydrogen electric vehicle sector. It's a very small market recently. It's just beginning to develop. But anyway, until July this year, from the beginning of this year, Hyundai company represents 51.2%, followed by Toyota and Honda. And last year was also the same, Hyundai, Toyota, and Honda. But I'd like to remind you that the market is really small. So far, only about 10,000 vehicles have been sold, but it will grow in the near future. And then shipbuilding. Korea maintains #1 spot in shipbuilding orders in value terms during the first half of 2021. In CGT terms, it's China, which is the biggest, but I guess this year, in CGT terms, I guess Korean shipbuilders will exceed China. That's the trend in this year. When it comes to steel production, Korea is #6 in the world. Now let me turn to financial stability of Korea. You know, there are 3 major credit rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, and Fitch IPCA. You know, according to categories, there is a number, and this represents the number of countries belonging to this specific category. For example, in Moody's AAA, there are 12 countries, including the United States. In case of Korea, according to Moody's, it's in the 3rd category, 3rd most stable country category. And the same with S&P. And when it comes to Fitch, it's the 4th category. But here I indicated only US, Korea, Japan, and China. And I proudly like to highlight that Korea is much more creditworthy than Japan and China. Sorry for China. I'm very relieved that Japanese Consul General has already left. And the next is CDS, Credit Default Swap. Credit Default Swap is roughly assessment by the international financial investors in the market. And Korea is #13, which means according to, in terms of CDS, Korea is 13th most reliable and stable country financially in the world. Okay, let me briefly touch upon the national brand value. You know, there is a World's Brand Awards. This is an institution which assesses the brand value of specific countries. And last year, the World Brands Awards created a country brand category. That was the first time in the world, in the history of Worldwide Brand Awards. And they assessed countries according to 3 categories, which is doing business category. Korea won the gold medal, followed by Singapore and Japan. And doing tourism category, you know, last year, Korean government was busy with handling with COVID-19. They didn't have much energy to promote tourism, so Korea was not included in this category. And the 3rd one, overall category, it's mainly handling of COVID-19, how well countries handled COVID-19, and Korea was ranked third, followed by New Zealand and Singapore. Now let me turn to Korea-US economic and trade relations. The most remarkable event in the history of Korea-US trade is the conclusion of FTA, which took effect in 2012, about 9 years ago. And since 2012, Korea-US trade volume increased as much as 30%, from $101 billion in 2012 to 131 in last year. So as a result, Korea is the United States' sixth largest trading partner, and US is Korea's second largest trading partner. And when it comes to Texas, in 2020, last year, Texas exported $12.5 billion worth of goods to Korea, and Korea imported $6.5 billion worth of goods from Korea. So Korea is Texas' fifth largest trading partner of Texas. And Texas' top export goods to Korea is oil and gas, computer and electronics, and chemicals, machinery, etc. And Texas' main import goods from Korea is computer and electronics products and electoral equipment. And lastly, let me give you two examples of Korean companies' investment in the state of Texas. The first one is Korean biotech company Nguyen, and this Korean company Nguyen bought a US company called VGXI in 2008. And it has been a leading contract manufacturer of plasmid DNA from 2012. Plasmid DNA is an ingredient for vaccines. And at the end of last year, VGXI, or Nguyen, they opened a new plant in Conroe, Montgomery County. And this new facility is going to go operational next year, and it is expected to produce 1.8 kilogram of plasmid DNA, which will enable production of 1.8 billion doses of mRNA vaccines. And VGXI has another plan to expand its facility further through additional investment of $48 million after the completion of current project. And the last one is that Samsung Electronics. Well, Samsung opened the semiconductor plant in Austin in 1998, which was a $17 billion investment. Last May, there was a summit meeting between Korea and United States, and at that time, Samsung announced a new investment plan, which amount to $17 billion in Texas. Arizona was also cited as a host state, but according to recent newspaper, Williamson County, which is near Dallas, is being mentioned as a strong candidate for the new facility for building the semiconductor plant. So once construction begins next year, it is expected to be completed by the end of 2024, and new facility is expected to have a local economic impact of $10 billion over its first 20 years operation, and create 10,000 jobs, including indirect employment. So this is the end of my presentation. And actually, the point I'd like to deliver is that Korean economy is developing very fast and dynamically. So I believe the opportunity between Korea and Texas in terms of trade and investment will grow very rapidly in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Consul General. And we have invited the Consul General of Mexico, but due to some IDA situation in Louisiana, so he cannot come. He's absent. And Mexico is Mexico and China. They always kept number 1 or number 2 in the trade ranking. Mexico is number 1 Houston trade partner in 2018 and 2019, and China is number 1 in the 2020. Oh, and China is absent today as well. Next speaker will be Consul General Nguyen. Texas is the first state in the USA to sign a government MOU with the Vietnamese government after the war. The trade with the Vietnam 2019 was increased 54%, and in the 2020 another 10% increase. There are many Vietnamese living in Houston. Let's welcome Consul General Nguyen.
Good morning, and thank you, the ACC, and also to Dr. Jensen for providing an opportunity for me to speak. And it is also, this is my, I've just came to Houston not long time ago and amid the COVID. So it is really difficult. It was really difficult for us to meet in person and also to do our job. But hopefully that we will have more and more meetings like this so that we can do our new normal diplomacy. Thank you. And thank you again, the ACC, providing me with this forum to talk a little bit about, of course, our country and also about the relations between our two countries. And as Dr. Jensen also mentioned, after the war, and of course, in the past, the US and Vietnam were standing on an opposite side of the war. And in 1975, the war ended. And from then on, our country and, of course, the United States tried to be friends. And actually, in 1975, the two countries normalized the relations. And from then on, the relation has been developed at a very quick pace. And in 2013, the two countries signed a historical partnership. We call it the US-Vietnamese Comprehensive Partnership, which has been the guideline for the relations between the two countries. And the political and the other various fields of the relations has been flourished. Investment, commerce, and people-to-people relations. And here are some numbers for that relations. How about the trade? The trade between the two countries from in 1995 was at a modest level or number. It is only 4,500 million US dollars for the bilateral trade in 1995. And how about in last year? Last year, it was something around 90 billion US dollars for the turnover of the trade between the two countries. And in 2019, the United States was Vietnam's second largest trading, and Vietnam was the 13th largest trading partner of the United States. That is a very, very interesting number. And how about the investment? The investment between the two countries has increased quite a lot in the duration of the first decade since the two countries normalized the relations. The investment from the United States to Vietnam was only about $500 million US. But now, only last year, $2.6 billion worth of the US investment in our country. And one interesting thing is that our country, or our big countries, companies are now investing in the United States. And the interesting things we have heard from one of our new developed companies, it is the mobile or the cars manufacturing companies of Vietnam, the VinFast, has already decided to set up an electric vehicle factory in the United States, and they are looking for a place to put their factory here. And they are now looking either between Texas or California. So that is the news for the investment from our countries to the United States. And saying about the trade and the trade opportunities, yes, it is the population of Vietnam is we cannot compare with the my colleagues here from India and also from Indonesia. But it is a big population with 97 million people. In comparison with Texas, Texas is almost 29 million. But yeah, we are small countries, but with a big population. And the big population with the economic is developing at a fast pace. It will be a great opportunity for commerce and for business. And our population, and Vietnam is at the moment is the emerging middle class is now growing. So currently, only 13% of the population are now considering as middle class, 1/3. And so by the projection of some economists, by 2026, the middle class will reach about 26% of the population. That will create some kind of a huge market for the export. And of course, as my Asian colleague from Indonesia also mentioned about the American products. Yes, of course, the American products are very well known in our country because of a long history of trade with your country, and we really valued the made in USA products. And whenever it is my own observation, whenever we are going, when I was back there in our country, whenever I'm going to a supermarket or to anywhere and see or saw some products with your flags and made in America, yes, it would got my attention, and of course I will go for that product in favor of the others. So it means that your product has got some kind of an interest from the consumers, from the Vietnamese consumer. And of course, your countries or Texas with a very huge potential of education and of the medical facilities and medical technology, because Google has got quite a lot of interest from our people to send their children to study either at middle or at high school level or at the university level. Now there are something around thousands of Vietnamese students are studying here. And do you know that with an Asian tradition, it is rarely that a family will send their children at a very young age, at the middle school or high school age, to be separate from their family. But there are quite a lot of our families now, because of their trust in the education system and in the caring system of those schools, so that there are quite a lot of our families are now willing to send and be believable in the system, so that they can send their kids at a very young age to have the education from the United States. And we went to a school, the School of the Future here in Texas, and there are about something like 100 Vietnamese students at a very young age are now studying there. So that is also one aspect of the interest of our people, of the Vietnamese populations in the services that now Texas and the United States are providing. And the last things I want to mention about that is our consulate here. We have a staff of 11 people, and we have the political section, we have trade sections, and we have the other sections. And we are here with one a very unique function, is that to push and to facilitate the relations between our country and Texas. So please, if you have any things, you can feel free to approach us, and we are very happy to facilitate and to help you. Thank you very much.
Consul General Ba, thank you so much. Next speaker will be Mr. Benjamin Shi, Director of Economic Affairs, Taipei Economy and Cultural Office in Houston. In 2007, Taiwan External Trade Development Council and the Great Houston Partnership signed MOU to promote the mutual benefit in economy. Director Shi, also I will thank you for having brought this year's first investment project to Houston. The winner is the Taiwan First Bank. Thank you very much, Mr. Shi, please.
Thank you, Jensen, for the kind introduction. And I would also like to thank the colleagues of our Asian Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event and for inviting me to speak on behalf of Taiwan. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the latest economic development of Taiwan and the business opportunity in Taiwan. I prepared some slides so I can make myself better understood. Last year, you know that the global economy was hit severely by COVID-19 pandemic. Taiwan also experienced a roller coaster up and down. Fortunately, we landed safely. We still register, our GDP growth rate still registers more than 3%. That is one of the few countries still register positive growth rate. We are very, very proud of this. And the main reason for this is because of the booming home economy. As most countries in the world impose the so-called stay-at-home orders, it unexpected stimulate the home economy. and driving up the demand for electronic products such as the mobile phone and the smart devices. Yeah. And those products happen to be the major export items of Taiwan. Yeah. So it really helped boost Taiwan's economic activities. And this year, as the global economy rebound, Taiwan's economy actually has grown even faster. Yeah. For the first 8 months, compared with the same period last year, we grew both the export and the import has grown more than 30%. Yeah. And we estimate our GDP growth rate will reach 5.88 this year. The US used to be the largest export market for Taiwan, yeah? But now it dropped to the second place after China. Yeah? But still, the US market is still very important to Taiwan. Yeah? Last year, it accounted for more than 14% of Taiwan's total exportation. Yeah? But we still enjoy a huge amount of trade surplus with the US. Yeah? Last year, it registered more than $18 billion. Yeah? That is nearly that is more than double than 5 years ago. Yeah? And that's why the US government is always alert Taiwan on this trade surplus. Yeah? And of course, my government has been doing very hard. We try to reduce this amount. Yeah? But because the US and Taiwan, we play a different role in the global supply chain. Yeah? So I think this trend could be very difficult to reverse. Yeah? And for the Texas and the Taiwan trade, yeah, the semiconductor and the machinery used for manufacturing semiconductor used to be the most important export items of Texas to Taiwan. Yeah? But in recent years, as the oil and gas industry has been booming in Permian Basin. Yeah? And as I remember, by the end of 2015, the US government lifted the export ban of crude oil. Yeah? And ever since, the crude oil has become the most important export item of Texas to Taiwan. Yeah? It accounted actually nearly 1/3 of total exportation to Taiwan. Yeah? Taiwan also import a number of agricultural products, yeah, such as frozen beef and cotton. Yeah? So if you are not in the oil and gas business, maybe you can consider going to Taiwan to open a steakhouse in Taiwan. Yeah? Taiwan, the semiconductor and the ICT products such as the computer are the major export items of Taiwan to global markets. Yeah? So it's no surprise to see that we sent a lot of those products to Texas too. Yeah? Taiwan is also very good at the traditional products. So you can see a lot of traditional products such as screw and nuts and auto parts to Texas. Yeah? Texas has actually a main attraction to foreign companies. Yeah? For instance, there's no state income tax, and there's a very solid industry base. Yeah? And there's ample space it's easy for living. Yeah? So that's why a lot of Taiwanese companies they move to Texas. Yeah? For instance, especially those petrochemical and the electronic companies. Yeah? For instance, the largest petrochemical company in Taiwan for most plastic, they moved to Texas nearly 40 years ago. Yeah? And actually, they invested more than $15 billion in Texas. Yeah? And Foxconn is actually, here you can see the Foxconn. Foxconn is the largest OEM electronic company in the world. I can say that. Yeah? They have one factory in Houston, and the other one in very close to Dallas. Yeah? And for semiconductor companies such as TSMC and MediaTek, yeah? they have a R&D center and customs service office in Austin. Yeah. And this year, we have 2 Taiwanese banks open branch office in Houston, ready to serve the local business community. Yeah. And actually, there are some Taiwanese companies, they want to utilize the benefits of free trade agreement between Mexico and the US and Canada. Yeah. So they decided to establish their factories in Juarez, yeah, very close to El Paso. Yeah. So in the future, as I said, we can see that maybe there will be more and more Taiwanese moving to Texas. Yeah. Last year, due to the pandemic, yeah, lots of many countries faced a shortage of medical equipment and some other very important critical materials. Yeah. And many countries started to realize the importance of diversify is a source of importation. Yeah. And some even consider to establish their own domestic supply chains. I think Taiwan we can help on this regard. Yeah. Taiwan has been playing a very important part in the global supply chain. Yeah. We do have some advantages. Yeah. First, we have built up a very solid industry base, yeah, over the past few decades. Yeah. In addition to semiconductor, in addition to the ICT products, yeah, we are also very competitive in the traditional products such as the bicycle, yeah, auto parts, and personal protection equipment there. And the second is my government is very devoted to the protection of intellectual property. We have amended our IP law in compliance with the international standard. Yeah. And in order to enforce those IP laws, we set up some police task force, yeah, to crack down illegal infringement activities. Yeah. And we also set up a so-called IP court, deal specifically with those IP lawsuits. Yeah. And we also have a very good talent space. Yeah. You know that Taiwanese value very much about education. Yeah. So nearly half of Taiwanese adults have a bachelor degree or above. Yeah. We know that in February, President Biden issued an executive order urge its cabinet to strengthen the resilience of Americans' supply chain, yeah, of critical materials such as semiconductor, batteries, rare earth, and pharmaceuticals. Yeah. But this executive order does not rule out the possibility of close cooperation with allies and partners who share American value. Yeah. I think Taiwan is one of the staunchest ally of the United States in Indo-Pacific regions. Yeah. So I think Taiwan, we are ready to cooperate with the U.S. To rebuild the supply chain of the U.S. Yeah. Currently, my government have been promoting several so-called coal industries in Taiwan, yeah, which we think could be crucial for the economic development in the future. Yeah, and here I give you 2 examples. Yeah. The first one is the semiconductor. Yeah. Currently, Taiwan ranks #1 in the manufacturing of advanced manufacturing of semiconductors. Yeah. There are several factors contributing to this success. First is the integrated cluster. Yeah. From Taiwan north to south, yeah, along the coast corridor, yeah, you can easily find there are so many semiconductor companies, yeah, located along these coastal areas. And these coastal areas are actually supported by the very convenient highway speed system. Yeah. So it's actually facilitate a very on-time technical support between among each other. Yeah. And the second is the Taiwanese semiconductor company. They still continue to invest tremendously in the R&D and also in the manufacture of advanced technology. So they try to keep the lead role in this industry. For instance, the TSMC announced to invest $100 billion in the next 3 years. Yeah. So I believe in the next few years we still can maintain this competitive edge in these industries. The second industry we want to promote is the electrical vehicle industries. The reason, as more and more, as the electric vehicle become more and more popular, my government also put a lot of effort to promote these industries. The reason we choose electric vehicle industries is because we think first we have in the past we already built up a very extensive experiences in the manufacturing of ICT products, and ICT products will be widely used in the electrical vehicles. So that's why we think if we can apply these experiences to these industries, we have a very good chance to succeed. And the second is that we, over the past few decades, we already built up a very complete supply chain for traditional vehicles. So, and we have, we believe we can meet the demand of most major car manufacturers, including those startup electric vehicle companies. And third, my government also very support. We established some testing ground in the southern part of Taiwan. Oh, I forgot to show you the photo. Next week on September 15th, and also on the following week on September 22, my government is going to organize 2 virtual conferences. The main topic on the first conference will be focused on smart medicine and the electrical vehicle industry. And the topics on the second virtual conference will be on 5th generation and also the semiconductor industries. We are going to invite some Taiwanese industry experts to share with you the latest development in those industries. I think this is a very good opportunity to gain insights on Taiwan's major industries. So welcome to register to these 2 events. We have a corner in the arena. Welcome to visit us to the booth. And you can collect some information about Taiwan and also use the QR code on table to register to this event. Thank you very much. Here I end my presentation.
Thank you, Director Shi. We spent 2.5 hours visit 6 Asian countries now. It's long, but it's short. Thank you to all of you for joining this meeting today. The Greater Houston Partnership will continue with ACC, City of Houston, Department of Commerce, and Exim Bank, will continue to work closely with Consul Corp to promote the trade. I look forward to our continued efforts to strengthen trade and cultural relations between our respective regions and to many more years of friendship. And today's speakers, please come to the stage. We'll have a group of photos. After group photos and others, there is go to the lunch is the next door. Thank you.